All right, guys, welcome back to ZCT. This is episode 19. My co-host Matt here. And I've gotten a lot of questions over the past few months about ownership costs for my two cars, my NSX here and then my Porsche 997 Carrera. So instead of do like another driving video where I talk about it, I figured we just knock it out real easy, real quick. And the luxury of that is I can have my car maintenance spreadsheet pulled up in front of me.
Numbers right in front of you.
So I can give you exact numbers. Because I actually am very meticulous about documenting this stuff. Like when I just do, even if I'm just topping off like half a quart of oil, I will document it.
Okay.
So,
hey, that's good. That's good car ownership practices.
Yes. And by the way, if you guys don't have a good spreadsheet, like to do this, you should definitely look into it. I'm sure there's lots of templates out there. Like it's really easy to just set up something in Google Drive and just you never have to worry about it again.
Yeah. Then you're like, oh, when did I last do that oil change or transmission flush or whatever?
Instead of putting those little dumb stickers on your windshield.
Yeah.
And it's super helpful for the next owner too. So
yeah, for sure.
All right, so getting into it, we'll talk about the NSX first.
All right.
I bought the car in early 2017, January. That had 108,600 miles on it. Okay. Now, it's August 6, 2021, just under 119,000 miles. So I've put
a little over
10,000.
Got it.
Maybe 10,500 miles. Everything included, including tires, including the few mods that I put on it.
Yeah, the upgrades.
Maintenance.
And this is like, 4 years then?
You bought 4.5 years.
4.5 years.
Okay,
so that's easy to kind of divide by year.
Yeah. So the only thing this doesn't include is fuel costs and
if you had fuel costs in there and insurance, I'd be pretty impressed.
That'd be kind of ridiculous.
That'd be over the top. But yeah,
that'd be over the top. But so I've spent $10,000 to own this car for 4.5 years. But let me give you the breakdown of what that is, because it actually could be a lot less.
Okay. Sure.
That $10,000 includes 3 sets of tires.
Okay. Because not only tires, because you switched wheels.
Yeah, 4 of those tires are still almost brand new, and they're sitting on
the corner of the garage.
Some of those wheels over there, the stock wheels. The only reason I switched it is because I think I bent one of the wheels, or like one of the wheel weights came off at the track. So I had to switch to these wheels. I bought these wheels from a buddy.
Yeah, I remember that.
For cheap. So 3 sets of tires, probably 4 to 5 oil changes, all done myself. It includes my steering wheel, my works bell hub, which I broke. I broke the clock spring when I did that, so that was another $200 I had to spend. That was just due to my own ignorance or incompetence. The Pride V2 RFL exhaust that you helped me install, that was $1,000.
Put a link up there. That was so loud.
Loud and completely unnecessary. So that's 1,000 of the 10,000 already.
That's already a tenth, like, accounted for.
Yep, and includes like $500 of registration and smog costs, right? Refilling the AC, installing speed bleeders like brake fluid, these wheels, and a set of tires that I used for one track day and then tossed because they were useless for me. It includes fuel pump resistor because I had to replace some stuff because the car was having starting issues.
Right.
Did all that stuff myself. I did the valve cover gasket myself as well.
So while you're breaking that down, what were the things that you kind of knew you had to do maintenance-wise that came up, and then what are the things that kind of popped up and they were unexpected? Because people who are watching this are like, okay, like what should I look out for? But then what are some things that like popped out of nowhere that you had to account for in that $10K cost?
Yeah,
if you could break it down like that.
So I am very lucky in that I bought the car from someone who was super meticulous.
Very
like
diligent.
He had a garage and he put the car on a lift and he completely did everything to the engine. Completely took it apart. All the gaskets and seals and everything were done. Measured the clearances for everything. So, and he did the timing belt as well.
And that timing belt, how much is that usually?
I don't know how much
that's usually a big thing.
That's a big thing with the NSXs because these are interference engine, and the timing belt is only rated for like a few years or something.
Okay.
So that's a big maintenance item. I want to say it's like at least a couple grand to do the timing belt and water
It's a
pump.
big deal.
Yeah. It's not engine out, but it still costs quite a bit. I haven't had to do that because the previous owner did it, and he put in a Toda timing belt, which is supposed to last a lot longer.
I see.
So I'm not really worried about it for the time being. But the stuff back to your original question, the stuff that came up on me unexpected. So
okay, yeah, let's hear about those.
When I broke the clock spring, that was completely unexpected because I was an idiot.
Yeah.
The AC failing, so that was one thing I had to deal with. So it's a common problem with NSXs that the climate control unit, the CCU, the electronics basically break.
Okay,
and then it just won't work. Mine is fine, but I think I had some kind of small leak, maybe in the compressor or something. So the Freon was actually leaking out over time. I just got it repaired again because the first time I repaired it, I just used one of those things over there and just refilled it myself. It worked for less than a year before it started blowing hot air again. Okay. So this time I had it done by a shop. They told me there might be a tiny leak on the compressor, but I need to drive it more to figure it out. That didn't cost much. It was like $200 some.
Okay.
Another thing that came up that I did not expect was my engine was having starting problems, and so I had to replace the fuel pump resistor. That was a big diagnostic thing. Actually, no, it wasn't the fuel pump resistor that was the problem. I did end up replacing that, but it turned out to be the ignition switch under the steering wheel. So that was a lot of like DIY stuff. That was, it only cost me like a couple $100 to fix that.
Okay.
Oh, and then the clutch going out, which is, 108,000 miles when I bought the car.
Original clutch.
I'm pretty sure. That's like more expected than unexpected.
Yeah, I didn't even know it was still the original clutch before you replaced it.
Yeah, and so that job cost me $3,800, but that's keeping in mind that I bought a brand new OEM clutch set.
And if you go OEM, that's like really expensive.
At least as expensive as like a basic aftermarket one, but I want an OEM because I like the OEM feel.
Sure.
So I paid like $1,760 for that. Ooh. I paid $445 for aftermarket June lightweight flywheel. Okay. I paid like the shop like $1,600, including labor and like the rear main seal and like the release bearing. So all in all, $3,800 for the clutch job, but it feels great now, and
that'll last forever now.
Yeah, completely.
So yeah, like $3,800 for the clutch, which is like pretty good chunk of the 10,000, and then
all the tires.
So that's already almost half the cost. So other than that, it's been for a car that was 91, right? Mm-hmm. Pretty solid. Honestly. And we'll compare it later to your other car. Oh, God. That's a whole other story about cost and relative unexpectedness. But, Honda engineering, Honda reliability, even in a sports car like this.
So that's the big thing. Solid. But also the second thing was buying it from someone who really took care of it.
Right. And so, to your point about keeping a very detailed spreadsheet or something of all the stuff you did upon resale, if you provide that to a seller, they're going to be
I have a tab on my spreadsheet for everything he sent me every single part so head bolts, valve seats resurfaced, leak down test, everything that he did.
Yeah. And so that made you confident in your purchase.
So I believe I overpaid for the car given like the average market value of an NSX with that mileage.
But you had that information.
But I have this information, and I don't regret it one bit because I haven't had to do a lot of stuff on this car that other owners have had to replace.
So that $10K could have been like even more.
Like 15,
if there's a lot of stuff, a lot of skeletons in the closet per se.
Exactly.
So 10K, interesting breakdown of that car. I think it's cool to see that you're that meticulous in the information that you keep. And honestly, 10K for the 4.5 years, that's like really good.
2K, like if you take out all the optional crap that I put on it.
The RFL exhaust and the tires.
The tires, like that's really like probably like 7 to 8K.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
So, now on to the other car that I happen to own. The car that I've owned not for 4.5 years, but
like a year.
9 months.
9 months. Okay.
All right. Okay. So let's go into that.
So while you're doing that, give me the skinny for the total, addition spent
on the Porsche.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
And while you disclose that, I think a lot of it came up on the unexpected column.
Unexpected.
Like, definitely, because you knew that, like, going into, and we can go into what is expected, but
Yeah.
I would say 90% of these costs are from the unexpected column. So what's the total that you have right now?
So if I just back out my registration cost, because I shouldn't include that, because that was like when I first registered the car.
Sure.
That was like $1,000. So I've spent, oh God, 22,000.
Woo! I mean, and it's kind of like people should be appreciative that you're disclosing this, because that's a lot of money, right? That's like, and you're being transparent about it, you know, like there's no hiding behind it. Things can happen, and your journey of this spend is quite an interesting tale. I'm sure we've talked about it.
Yeah.
Right. But, you know, now that we're breaking it down across the 9 months, that's
a lot of money.
Quite a lot.
And trust me, even though that's a lot of money, that's not to say I took it to a shop from day one and just told them, like, start throwing money at them to try to fix the problems. I spent a lot of hours wrenching on that thing.
You spent days.
A lot of hours, a lot of like very mechanically inclined friends helping me out.
Yeah.
Trying to chase down this misfire
all this
issue.
Data, all this data going through, you know.
Data logging.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It was a lot.
It wasn't like throw all the money at it and just pray it works because I can afford it. It was like, no, I'm putting a lot of time.
It could have cost more.
It could have cost more. You're picking wisely when to take it to professionals, and you're providing them information that not a normal person.
Yeah, I told them, hey, I've done these 10 things already. Don't do these 10 things. I'm not going to pay you to do these 10 things.
Yeah. So let's break down then, like, the kind of the unexpected bigger costs per se.
Yeah. By the way, oil changes on this thing. Before I go into the bigger costs, 8 to 9 quarts of oil per change, it's not cheap. It's like a little over $100 per oil change. Anyway, so the stuff that really hurt.
Okay.
The main thing, so the whole thing with this car for me was the misfire that it had from day one.
Yeah.
This is these cars are known. These engines, the M96s, are known to have misfire issues a lot, but they're usually solved easily with spark plugs, ignition coils, and like O2 sensors, like just the basic things, right? For engine health. I did all those things. I also did the fuel injectors. That was a huge pain in the ass. And I did not do the O2 sensors, but that because I knew that wasn't a problem.
I mean, they were new, right? Or something. We cleaned them and everything, and it was just like it couldn't have been.
I didn't even clean the O2 sensors, but I've had a feeling that wasn't the problem.
Okay.
So what I ended up doing is paying 2 shops, like very high-end specialty Porsche specific shops. The first one I paid almost $3,700 because when I gave them the shop, I told them all the problems I was having. They did a diagnostic and they came back to me and said, we're not exactly sure, but it seems like you have an air leak in the intake system somewhere.
Right.
And so that could be causing a misfire. And so what I had them do is I had them custom install, like fabricate a mounting system for a 996 Motorsport AOS, the air oil separator. It's a common failure point in all 996, 986, 987, 997 Porsches.
Right.
And I knew I wanted to track the car, so I wanted to get the Motorsport AOS anyway, so I don't get oil starvation or like oil getting sucked into the intake. So that cost me almost $3,700, and out of that, the parts itself was like $850 for the Motorsport AOS, but the labor was the big part because they were
like custom fabbing stuff to get that Sport AOS.
Yeah, so this is
it's crazy.
So for the 997.1 Carrera, they don't make a Motorsport AOS for that car. So your only option is to take a 996 AOS and make it fit somewhere. And BR Racing is the shop that did it. They had never done this before, and they've worked on Porsches for decades. Right. So I might be the first person to ever put a Motorsport.
So if you want to go there to get an AOS on there on your specific in that Porsche,
at least they know how to do
it because you were the first of their customers to do it.
Exactly. So that didn't fix the problem.
Yeah, unfortunately, like you said, okay, it should be working, and then I remember a couple days, like I don't know if it was the same day or a couple days, you're like, It's back. I was
It's
like,
back.
oh, I was just so gutted. I was
Yeah.
like, are you serious? So much time spent in there. This is back.
$3,700 later, same problem. But at least I had the upgrade.
And now you can track.
And
like,
now,
you don't have to worry about AOS while tracking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what the actual problem ended up being, but between the time that I did that and then the time that I took it to another shop, I tried more stuff.
Troubleshooting, right?
I did the fuel injectors. I did the ignition coils again. I did the spark plugs twice, which is a stupid idea. I don't know why I did that.
Desperate at that time. Like
Yeah.
Anything,
And
anything.
I tried changing out the exhaust gasket at the header side, the header to the block.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
One of the screws got stuck. That's a whole other story. That was a nightmare. But basically, none of those things fixed it. And so, we were logging it on my Durametric again.
Yeah.
And we found that it was still misfiring. It was logging codes, check engine light, and it just wasn't running smooth. And at one point, the car actually shut down on me. Like the engine started bogging really bad, and I was like, okay, something's seriously wrong.
Yeah.
So I reset it and everything. I took it down to Callus Rennsport in Los Angeles, and they did such a good job. They diagnosed everything.
Their daily reports were riveting.
Yeah,
Like
daily
they would
reports with photos.
Like at the end of the day, you would send us what they had done, and it was like reading a novel.
Yeah,
like a story of how their day went. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm reading a mechanic's journal.
Yeah,
it was crazy.
Really great shop. I mean, you pay top dollar for them, but there's a reason.
Right, which you'll get into the cost soon about that, but.
Yeah.
Pretty worth.
It was worth it because they fixed the car. Well,
Yeah,
let's just put it that way. They fixed the car. What it ended up being was the OEM dual mass flywheel. The spring in the middle of the two pieces failed, and so you could actually turn the two pieces of the flywheel in opposite directions more than you should be able to, and somehow that action was transmitting vibration into the engine and causing the engine to misfire.
Who would have thought?
Just completely just an example of Porsche over engineering. Why do you need a dual mass flywheel?
Right.
It's supposed to reduce vibration and harshness, but I mean, it's a Porsche. Come on. It should just be a good flywheel. A single mass flywheel is fine.
Yeah. But the fact that they got to that conclusion, it just blows my mind, because I'm sure you researched everywhere, and nothing pointed towards that.
So here's the thing. Even
Right?
before I took it to them, when I was researching it, the flywheel being a potential issue did come up.
Oh, it did.
But I chose not to address it yet because it is by far the most labor-intensive thing.
Right. You're gonna try to knock out the little ones, hope it resolves it. But unfortunately, I mean, hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
It turned out to be the most expensive thing.
Yeah. Granted, now it has new injectors, new spark plugs, new ignition
it's
coils.
ready to go.
It's ready to go.
It's ready to go.
So let's talk about the cost, though. I spent $6,200 with Callus Rennsport. So that's a big old chunk of that $22,000 right there.
But they fixed it.
And
no more misfires.
Yeah.
So that's huge.
It's good to go now.
Yeah.
Other things I've spent, this is optional track prep that I wanted to do just to make the car good to go before I track it. I did an OEM water pump kit with a low temp thermostat. I did the front radiator kit, the center radiator, a full coolant flush, all fluids and everything. That was around $1,600, parts and labor. I replaced the inner and outer tie rods because there was some play in there. The front upper shock mounts, that was about $650. And then the rest of it was mostly oil changes. Oh, I forgot to mention, out of that $22,000, $4,800 was me putting those Advan GTs on.
Yeah, I was gonna say you had a big chunk of upgrade or one or two big things on the NSX accounting for the total spend. But yeah,
but this one way more. I went just complete YOLO mode.
Pretty sweet wheels and tires, but those are not cheap.
Not cheap. So if you take out that, call that $5,000, take that out of the equation, and we're talking $17,000 to own the car for 9 months.
Yeah, and then we'll back out the two major services. So that's 6,100 and then
6,200 and 38.
And 38.
So that's about $10,000 you can back out.
So still $12,000 for 9 months of ownership, sans the big spends.
Well, $7,000 if you back out the wheels.
Yeah. So, but still, stark difference between cost of ownership for German engineering, and then
Yeah.
Honda engine there.
And that's a 14-year newer car than this,
Yeah.
with only 70-some thousand miles on it.
Yeah, and you didn't put near as many miles on it. So,
Well, I put more miles on it now.
Well, yeah, because you've been driving more.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't want to put too many miles on the NSX,
Yeah.
but still, cost of ownership is kind of not apples to apples because you don't drive this one as much. You drive that one way more. But
I think overall I've put about 10,000 miles on each car. So actually we
Interesting.
are at a similar
okay, so mileage total wise, you're at this, but just time of ownership is
time of
is
ownership is totally different. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I think that's the interesting take.
Yeah.
I'm sure the viewers appreciate how transparent you are in your spend. Not cheap. But yeah, it was interesting to hear the breakdown of each car, how much you expect. Some people who are maybe interested in the two, how much you can expect to, pay to own. I guess.
So I think I was also really unlucky with the Porsche.
Oh yeah.
Because like that flywheel issue, it has been documented before, but it's pretty rare.
Right.
Most people, if they have a misfire issue, they just throw like spark plug ignition coils, and that it's done. It's
so
like
hopefully,
fixed.
maybe someone listening to that who has that,
Yeah.
maybe they'll learn.
But if any one of you guys have gone through this journey and still can't figure it out, give the flywheel a look, because
for the misfires.
Yeah, because they can actually measure. They can use some kind of machine to actually measure the, I guess, the waveform of the flywheel while it's spinning.
Oh my gosh!
So it doesn't mean you have to completely like take out the flywheel and just like replace it. And,
so they can like detect it and see if you need it. To fix it. Oh, that's pretty cool.
So anyway, so the journey with that car continues.
Yeah, we'll see more of it in the future, I'm sure.
Yeah, and the funny thing is the total cost of both cars, including the purchase price, is now very close. Even though this car is worth so much more than that one.
And that's just like some people are dealt cars like that, and you decide how much you want to put into it, and that's how it goes sometimes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for sure. Okay, so I think that's the cost of ownership. Sharing. Thanks for sharing for both of those, and we'll just pivot. I guess briefly now to just some quick fire questions that we had queued up from 7 months ago. And like
actually, I don't have ones from that long ago. I just have some random questions from
your
videos.
socials or something. Okay, yeah. So ask the questions, and hopefully we can get to them. Comment down below in any of the ZCT videos, and we'll try to if we see some interesting spicy topics, that's something that we can deliberate while we're just shooting the breeze here. So. Anything? What first came up then, Fenton?
Okay, so actually we're just gonna keep it simple because I know we're like 23 minminutes into
23 minutes.
I'll just talk about some of the questions I got on my latest video, which is the appreciating BMW E92 M3, whether it's still a good buy or not. I got a question talking about they want me to compare how my 997 drives compared to E92 M3.
Okay.
And the reason they're asking, because I said that they're kind of comparable in terms of just overall fun.
Okay.
But it's a lot more complicated than that because that's a rear engine car. The BMW is a front engine car.
Yeah.
To me, the BMW feels a lot more natural to drive. It's kind of like that has a better front end. Like the steering response when you turn into a corner, it feels planted. Even though it might get a little understeery at the limit, it communicates what the front tires are doing really well, and you really feel like you can lean on the front without the back end coming out. The BMW on the other hand, when you turn it into a corner, it feels a little bit floaty. You can feel that huge V8 hanging over the front axle. It's not the most confidence-inspiring thing, but it ends up not even mattering about the front end response so much, because the moment you get on the throttle, the rear end comes out because it's an M car. It's designed to slide around corners, and so that's like my brain has to be completely rewired when I'm driving the M3 versus my 997. It's all about like managing the throttle.
Okay.
So more throttle, more oversteer, less throttle, more grip, essentially. That car is more like, let me see how far I can take the front end grip of the car, because I'm not worried about the back end coming out unless I like lift off the gas really abruptly.
Okay. Yeah.
So totally different in the way they drive, but they're both fun in their own way. To me, I think that feels more like a sports car that's designed for lap times, whereas a M3 and all M cars for that matter that I've driven, like it's almost like regardless of the lap time, let's just have fun.
Spirited driving
slide around
is way better.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, and I know probably people don't like getting asked. It's like, so what's more worth or preferred right now, given how you drive? What do you prefer between the two?
Given how I drive, and I come mostly from front engine rear drive because I had my S2000 for the longest time.
Yeah.
I prefer the E92 because it feels more natural to me, even though I know the limits of that car are higher.
Sure.
I know how to drive an M3 better than I know how to drive a 997.
Yeah, there's some, I mean, it being, rear engine.
It has a much bigger learning curve.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can get a little squirrely. Once you hit that critical point, it's very difficult, right?
Yeah,
like
and I haven't even driven it hard enough to get to
and
that
that's
point.
probably very scary, to be honest. Like,
it's like a pendulum. If you think about it, like you're literally driving a car with like most of the weight hanging off of behind the rear axle.
Yeah.
So if you start to oversteer, it just wants to do a 180.
Yeah. Oh, okay, that's cool. Yeah, that's a good question. So, it's cool to get the questions from your most recent videos.
So another question is, how does the E92 chassis compare with the F80 or F82, which is like the 2015 to 2020 or whatever,
okay.
M3, M4? So I think the newer car, the F80, feels a lot. But by the way, I have my next video that's going to be. Actually, by the time this video comes out, that video will already be published. It'll be the F80 M3 competition. So that I mean that should actually answer your question. But in short, the F80 feels a lot more planted, a lot more well sorted, a lot more confidence inspiring. The suspension just, I think it feels like it's on a different level than the E92 M3. That being said, I really miss the naturally aspirated V8.
Right, and all
the turbo.
The cars are getting away from naturally aspirated motors, so it's hard to replace the feel of that immediate feedback.
The immediate throttle response.
Put your foot down. Yeah, it's you can't replace that.
Yeah, the engine in the F80 is great. It makes a lot of power, a lot of torque. It revs high.
It's efficient.
It's more efficient, but it almost feels like a little too much. Like you can find yourself in trouble with that car a lot quicker than you would in a E92 M3.
Interesting. And I feel like the ethos around BMW is slowly changing. Before, like in that E92 era, after that E92, there was like a time where like I feel like they kind of lost their way until they moved to the M4 or the 2 and 4s, right? The 2 and 4 series. Like in that middle, I was like, I wasn't very excited for many.
Well, their cars
BMW
got really
things.
really heavy in the mid to late 2000s.
Yeah.
Mid to late 2000s.
They're just like, what market you trying to target here?
Yeah, because they're getting away.
Back to it. They're getting back to it. But.
Sort of. I think their new cars are even heavier though, or even bigger.
They?
Yeah.
Okay.
But they found a way to mask the weight. Like they make the cars handle really well.
Right.
But the M3 and M4 is not what that car used to be. Like when the E30 came out, that car was lightweight, underpowered, or sort of underpowered, 4-cylinder, and then it quickly just got bigger, heavier, more and more power. Now it's turbo, to where it has like probably 4 times the torque of the original car. So it's a different ball game now.
For sure.
Did that stop?
So not sure when exactly it got cut off, but we're discussing, the latest, your latest video with BMW, but we can just wrap that up.
Yeah, I'll just wrap it up. Basically, the F80/F82 M3 M4 feels a lot more well sorted than the E92, but I miss the engine of the E92.
Yeah, you can't replace the fact that it was NA.
Exactly.
And like turbos. I mean, there's some cars out there that kind of mask the lag.
Yeah,
I'll admit, but the instant gratification of putting your foot down and getting that power. You can't get that, and it's probably be less and less likely that that's going to exist because turbo is here to stay. Emissions and everything of that, and electrification of cars, it's not going anywhere. So.
Yeah,
Cool.
Exactly.
All
so
right.
we'll wrap that up here. If you guys have any other topic suggestions or just questions in general, like they can be specific, general, whatever, we'll try to address them in the next one. And we'll try to make this like, I know every time we do this, we're like, oh, we should make this more regular.
Yeah. I think with this setup, it'll be a little easier, and it's
Yeah.
a nicer background and easy to set up. And then will be a major change as well in the coming months, but we'll get this more regular, and we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. But
cool.
Thanks, guys, for watching. Thanks for being longtime viewers and subscribers. And we'll see you in the next one.